Welcome everyone to Our Right to Thrive webinar with Julie Farrell. I'm really delighted to be introducing this webinar. I'm Colin Hambrook. I'm an older white man, the founding editor of Disability Arts Online. I have short greying hair and glasses, and I'm wearing a blue jumper and a blue scarf. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ivan Riches, who's the lead artist on the project. And thanks. Hi, Ivan. Hi.
Hi, I'm Ivan Riches. I am a disabled sonic visual artist and also a poet and a musician. I am wearing a grey jumper. I'm a Baldylocks, and meaning I'm bald. Also, I am introducing a fascinating project, which is Our Right to Thrive, which the title came out of a poem that I've written about me wanting not just to survive, but to thrive. This is a project for disabled artists, writers, for them to join in, hopefully. We're setting up a blog. There will be a link to this blog that Joe will put on for you. And it's for any disabled writers who are facing attitudinal barriers and boundaries that we have been currently facing, with the government at the moment. So I'm kind of looking for kind of more politically charged poetry, if possible. Any little bits of writing, video responses or drawings or artwork that you want to send into the blog would be very welcome. I would do press on to you, anyone who's joining in, that this would be most welcome. Thank you. And now I will hand over to Julie Farrell.
Thank you, Ivan, and thanks so much to you and to Disability Arts and everyone there for having me here today. I'm really thrilled to be speaking to you all. I think the project is such a fantastic idea, and yeah, this is the time to resist, right? Like when it's the hardest, and it is hard. So I'll be chatting to you today about my experiences as a creative disabled person, about kind of navigating my career. So I'm an author and an activist and a poet. My name is Julie Farrell, and I have long red wavy hair. And today I'm wearing a long sleeve pink top and a gold pendant necklace with the Gemini constellation engraved on it, because I'm a Gemini, and I'm wearing round blue glasses, and I'm sitting against a white background with a pink sofa. So I'm gonna share my screen and hopefully this will work, and I will start my presentation. Can everybody see that okay?
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, I'm an author and a poet and a disability activist, and I've been writing for the last 10 years. So yes, I'm co-founder and director of the Inklusion Guide, which is a kick-ass guide to making literature events accessible to disabled people. I launched that, or I co-founded that rather, in 2021 with my fellow disabled author, Ever Dundas. And the reason that we did that as disabled artists was because we were so frustrated by the lack of access at literature events. We were trying to go along to, you know, inaccessible buildings, places that had really poor lighting or poor sound. So we decided to do something about it. And we raised £36,000 from 21 sponsors to create this free resource that could be used by audiences, individuals, organizations, publishing houses. The whole kind of idea would be that it would be a one-stop shop, and then it would be really accessible. And in the guide, we spotlight various different aspects of access, such as, you know, digital poverty. We have spotlights on intersectional disability as well, and additional challenges that intersecting identities would face. And we also, in the guide, made a point to talk about language and the social model of disability as our kind of framework for this guide. We had the print version of the guide launched in 2023 by Penguin Random House, and the whole shebang was launched at Edinburgh International Book Festival in 2022, and our guide is now available as well as being a free downloadable PDF and also in print. It's in BSL, audio, easy read, and large print as well. So I would definitely say, if it sounds interesting, to go and check out our website, because there's a lot of information on there, and it's all free, and hopefully it's all accessible to you. Up on the screen, there are 4 image boxes that are all part of the Inklusion brand. These have just some sound bites that we used while we were promoting the guide. So 1 in 5 people in the UK are disabled. A third of disabled publishing professionals have found publishing events to be inaccessible to them. UK businesses collectively lose around 2 billion per month by ignoring the needs of disabled people. And disability narratives are overwhelmingly white, as are judging panels and arts organisations dealing with disability. It does not reflect society. And that last one was a quote from Kirani Baraka, who was one of the 10 disabled consultants that we interviewed in order to create the guide. So we spoke to people with real lived and intersectional experience of disability in order to inform and create the guide. So I've been, for the last couple of years, continuing on a kind of sole basis with the Inklusion guide, because it's really hard work to do this kind of thing while you're trying to be a creative as a disabled person facing additional barriers. So Ever kind of took a step down in order to kind of really look after herself, which was a very sensible decision. I stayed on with our research partner to kind of figure out what the impact was that we had on the sector. We wanted to know, or I wanted to know, like, did the thing that we created work? Did it fulfill its aim? So there's 3 image boxes again on this slide. And this is demonstrating how our guide increased confidence of people that used it. It inspired other sectors to kind of emulate what we had achieved and what we delivered. And it also succeeded in changing the status quo. And I'll just quickly read out what's on those images. So 95% of survey respondents felt confident making access provisions after using the guide. The second one's a quote from our anonymous survey feedback, which says, "I am working on this for the museum sector in Scotland, and your guide is significantly informing the best practice guide that we will be putting out to the sector," which is incredible for us, that somebody actually was using our guide as a template for something that they were doing in another sector. And the third one is 89% of survey respondents have changed their access provisions across planning, budget, and delivery. Which again, these statistics are fantastic. So it's been a busy 4 years, thanks to Inklusion, and we've had impact and I guess what you would call success, to kind of unprecedented levels because of it. We were actually listed in, I think it was 2022 by the bookseller as yeah, like we were listed in their top 20, I think it is, or is it, maybe it's more than that. Oh no, I've forgotten, I'm sorry, but they're top publishing influencers in the UK, which was quite an achievement for us. So the guide, like I said, it kind of uses the social model of disability as our kind of starting point, and obviously that's what this program is kind of designed around, and it's so important that we kind of use this and that we kind of try our best to educate others that this is kind of what should be the norm. So yeah, the social model of disability, just for anybody that doesn't know about this, shows that society is disabling through the dominance of the medical model, lack of access, stigma, and damaging narratives. So it's kind of saying it's not the person's fault, like just being disabled doesn't inherently come with additional challenges and barriers. That's what's created by society, or a society that doesn't make room for disabled people and their needs. You know, it treats you as other, it pushes you to the margins, which is not great for us, and it makes it difficult for us to thrive. And I think that was kind of part of, well, it is the rage, if you like, behind the creation of the Inclusion Guide, and a lot of my work personally as an artist as well. We try very hard to kind of make it clear that it's society that's the problem and it's not the disabled person themselves. So we talk about in the guide identity first language, which is, for example, disabled person, which puts the emphasis on identification, and person first language, such as person with a disability, which puts the emphasis on personhood. And we are very pro identity first language. I will always refer to myself as a disabled person. I would never say person with a disability, just because that can really make it sound that it's about the individual and their impairment, and it kind of just sidesteps the fact that it's society that's got the problem. I should say that all of us need to identify in the ways that are comfortable for us, but it's just that would be like, yeah, that would be our kind of recommendation, and that is what I do as an artist. And I just wanted to kind of make a wee note about the use of the word crip, because we mention it in the Inclusion Guide. And Ever in particular was quite keen on sort of referencing using that word as a reclamation of something that would be thrown away as a slur. And it has been reclaimed by our community, and crip theory exists. There's academics, studies and papers and research that goes into this idea. And it's also kind of connected to queer theory as well. And we know that if you are in the disabled community, there is a far more kind of higher level of intersection between the queer community as well, and further like intersectional identities as well. But yeah, it's a good word to use, particularly within the community. And I think as a disabled person, it can be really empowering to reclaim language, because it says, you know, we are the people with the power and we get to choose how we describe ourselves. So as a writer who has been working on my career and trying to kind of make it as a writer for the last decade, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the state of diversity in the publishing industry for those who may not be aware. And to kind of say that less than 4% of books published in the UK feature or are written by a disabled person. And obviously we in this room know that on average 25% of the population in the UK are disabled. I mean, that's just awful. It's horrifying. I will go on to explain why that is. But it's definitely a really great fact to shout at people when they're asking you why you want to create art and why you want to be published if it's writing, or why you want to be commissioned if it's, you know, kind of other work. And that the answer would be because, you know, there's like a missing 21%, and there's this huge gap on the shelf that our disabled voices really need to fill, because we need to see ourselves represented in our books and our art and our society, kind of proportionately to our actual existence. And it's falling so far away from that at the moment. And in the publishing industry, marginalized or minoritized authors are often neglected for being too niche. Which, I mean, like, that is something I've heard somebody say within the last year to a writer trying to get published. So it's not an old notion, it's something that still infiltrates wider society. And obviously that perpetuates stigma and harmful tropes and the same old cycle of the same old stories, where it's the disabled villain, or it's the poor little disabled person that kind of sweetens this, makes the life of the non-disabled helper so saccharine and heroic. There's a lot of problematic narratives out there. So representation, why is it so bad? What can we do about that? Like, what do we need to know? How can we arm ourselves when we know that the industry isn't that welcoming? So I want to talk about why that's the state of play. So unconscious bias, for example, is a problem in the commissioning process, because you don't have as much diverse staff up at the kind of more senior roles in publishing and in arts commissioning often. And therefore you have the kind of majority population, people being put into senior roles where they're far, far more likely to have unconscious bias against disabled voices than any kind of, minoritized voice. And this whole discussion as well, I want to say that it goes without saying that the more intersectional your identity, obviously the more barriers and challenges are going to be up against you. And that's really, really hard. And that's something that, again, really needs to change. And it's just to kind of acknowledge that fact. And things are changing, and I will talk about that. So another thing is that querying, if you're querying agents, if you want to be represented, is much harder than it needs to be due to a lack of standardization. Every different agent at every different agency will all have different information on their querying pages. And they just haven't standardized it. And if you're writing across genres, it will be different for every genre. And they just kind of expect us to wade through that and do our research. Agents really like to see us do our research and due diligence, because then it proves that we're really committed, instead of acknowledging that it's unhelpful and that it's exclusive and excluding to those who might have issues with time and energy, or attention. I have ADHD and I'm autistic and I'm chronically ill. So querying for me was a blooming nightmare. I hated it and I did not do a lot of it. There's barriers to writing development opportunities. Financially, things might be out of our reach because we obviously have a much harder job earning a kind of standard living wage. Because of additional challenges, and we also would have lack of time to write as well. Again, energy, time, other commitments. Maybe we're working more than one job to make ends meet. And like I mentioned already, there's the lack of diverse senior staff as well. This graph is really just a quick, it's supposed to be a quick visual reference. So it shows, this is information that I have plugged into a chart that I took from the Penguin Random House Diversity Report that they released in 2022 after people started putting pressure on the biggest publishing houses to start being transparent about the diversity in their roles. And I just wanted to look at it to see what the difference was in, they push for a lot of diversity in their new hires and in their interns and their entry level roles, so that they can show off and say they're doing a great job. But if you look at it compared against diversity at the senior staff level, it kind of speaks volumes. And then the chart on the right-hand side shows the kind of diversity in the UK population. And it's split into 3 categories. So it shows BIPOC, LGBTQI plus, and disabled and chronically ill, sort of proportionately split out. And it's quite crude because it doesn't obviously take into consideration like intersectional identities. But just to kind of have a quick look at it, it's really clear that diversity against the kind of ratio in the population is even higher at the new hire level than it is in the standard population. But if you look at the senior staff level, it's far lower than what it is in the UK population. So they're actually going above and beyond with BIPOC and LGBTQI plus representation in their new hires. Disability, unfortunately, is below the UK population level at new hire and at senior staff level. But it's just really interesting that disability is actually the majority of the minorities, and yet it's the one that's kind of suffering the most in terms of diversity at new hire and senior staff levels. I hope that that wasn't too waffly and confusing, but it's just to kind of demonstrate that they can talk the talk, but we're not really going to see if they're walking the walk, so to speak, until that senior staff diversity picks up to the same level as new hire, or at least like what it is in the wider UK population. So I kind of wanted to talk a bit more about those things in terms of why traditional publishing isn't too accessible to disabled and marginalised writers. So I talked about disparity of privilege a little bit, and time to write. Like, you know, plenty of people who aren't disabled might be able to make, you know, work full time and earn enough money that they can go and pay for courses and editing and development opportunities that people who are disabled just do not have. And also, I think it's so important when we're bearing this in mind to kind of always talk about the fact as artists that we are fighting for our right to exist on a daily basis, and therefore we kind of start in a far more worn down, lower self-esteem position than anybody who is not disabled or facing barriers. And I think, I can't remember who it was, but I know that neurodivergent people, for example, by the age of, I think it's 12, have heard 20,000 more negative comments directed at them about themselves than people who are not neurodivergent. And I'm sure that that's kind of similar for wider disabilities as well. And it's not just specific to that. But that is, to me, a real indicator of what we are carrying on our shoulders as artists before we even put a pen to paper, let alone try and get it out into the world. And yeah, there's a quote there on the right that says we carry the weight of inaccessibility and prejudice on our shoulders every day before we've even started. It was me that said it, that's why there's no name underneath it. And yeah, we have the responsibilities to manage our health and our time and our energy. And, you know, I kind of always say to people when they ask me what I do, oh, you know, you're an artist, or you're a writer. Oh, right, do you do that full time? And I say, no, actually, I look after my health part-time and I write part-time, or I write part-time and I look after my health full-time, depending on how I'm feeling at any given point in the day or in the year, or whatever it might be. So I'm always kind of trying to be aware in my work and in my activism to have that conversation and to really drive it home for people that are not living my experience, that I am really putting so much energy into just getting up and on with the day and out of bed, let alone trying to create and express. And that's, for me, is part of my catharsis on living this existence in the society that we do. And it's important to me, therefore, that I care for myself, because if I don't create a space of care and nurturing around myself, and again, that's my privilege that I can actually do that, then it would be far more tricky, I think, for me to continue to create art and to speak up and to share my truth about this experience that I'm living. So to bring it back to what's happening in publishing, publishers do have a responsibility to publish books, and this is wider art as well, which fairly represents society in content and creation. And we need to, as a society, move away from tokenistic stories. And I think us as a disabled society, like our community, really needs to be open about being disabled. And I know that that's really hard, and that's not, you know, not everyone needs to do that, and that's totally okay. But if you are able, I think it's really good, because the louder we speak up, the less we can be ignored. And obviously now is a time where it's even more important and it's even more difficult to do that. And you know, I know how hard even this last week has been for me, to get up onto a stage last week to launch an anthology that I'm in after the week that we had, thanks to idiotic people over in the US that will not be mentioned. Well, let's not sully the talk, but you know, it's really hard sometimes to get up and to continue doing the work. But there's an element of just joy and connection and knowing that you have a community who's here and who's behind you, and that you're all kind of working together. I think that can be really empowering. Disabled people obviously need to be commissioned to write their stories in their own way. I think that's something that publishing also needs to get its head around, that we will create and express in wildly different ways from people who are not disabled and who haven't lived a kind of othered identity. And yeah, I would just say, if you're creating art, if you're writing, if anybody asks you, where do you sit on the shelf? What's the gap in the market? Every single person in this room can say, in that missing 21%, like, it's huge. There's a massive gap, and our voices should be there. And yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about, it's not all doom and gloom. It's been really hard for me, like I say, and I didn't enjoy querying. I only got my agent because it was somebody that I had known a few years prior who reached out to me and remembered my writing and was like, why are you not represented yet? And it's because I found it so hard to query. So I was asked to be represented by the agent I'm now with, and she's a really brilliant ally and champion for me as a disabled creator. So that's something. And so last week I was did the launch event for this anthology that I'm in, called Someone Like Me. And it's an anthology of non-fiction by autistic writers. And this is the international edition that I'm in. And this has been kind of already quite life-changing for me in a way, because I was approached by the editor when she was commissioning me, and she said, if you write for us, the only requirement is that you write from your experience of being autistic, and there's nothing more specific than that. And whilst prompts and briefs can be really great for getting the creative juices flowing, to me, it just felt very respectful and very liberating to have a publisher, a really decent publisher, reaching out and saying, you do you, because that is what this anthology is all about. And yeah, like being ADHD, I know my ADHD can make it really hard for me to submit to opportunities. I have really bad rejection sensitivity as well. So for someone just to kind of like cut out that awful trying to reach out to people and pitch myself step and ask me to write whatever I want was just brilliant. So I got to write about my obsession of with stargazing and how my lovely dad, who passed away a couple of years ago, taught me about how to navigate the night sky. So it's a kind of essay about grief and love and survival and giving ourselves permission to just feel wonder and joy at feeling wonder at our world, and to give ourselves permission to do that no matter how crap things are in the wider world. It's so important to allow ourselves pockets of joy, because the joy and wonder breeds resilience, and in my opinion. So that was a really, wonderful experience that demonstrates that being celebrated for just who you are is actually possible, which is hopefully good to hear. So I think it's really important as disabled creators to know our self-worth, to wake up every day and tell yourself that you are worthy of love and that you're worthy of respect and space. It's hard to do that, but it's important. In terms of like navigating careers, setting long goals can be really useful, and I found that really useful as well, especially with writing my novel and getting through creating the ink guide, and now I'm working on a poetry collection. It's just really useful to kind of maybe not look 10 years down the line, but certainly a year or maybe 2 years or 6 months or whatever a long goal would be for you. And just, try to connect with other people in this lovely community that are doing the same thing, because if you connect with them, you have that mutual support and you have cheerleaders who can celebrate all your wins, big or small, whether it's I wrote 100 words today, or hey, like I actually got a whole chapter out last week, or maybe, I've signed with somebody, whatever it might be. It's just really nice to have a group of people that you can celebrate each other's kind of milestones with. And that breeds more self-belief, I think, because your friends will believe in you when you do not. I know how many times my writer pals have picked me up off the floor when I've been ready to throw in the towel multiple times. And it's just, and I've done the same for them, and there will be bad days. And I think it's about understanding that they will happen, and we just have to try and accept them and then move on when we feel ready. So that thing included in that is, rewarding yourself as well. So whether it's a slice of cake or going for a swim or a walk or just having a really long nap or a cuddle with the dog, whatever it is, try to celebrate, because they're really big long-term moments, like getting published might not happen as quickly as you think, so celebrate the wee moments, because it kind of keeps you going. And I think attending workshops and obviously webinars like this one are all great, because it's hopefully inspiring and you have the opportunity to meet people as well in the chat, on the community pages on social media as well. And I just want to, I'm keeping an eye on my time. I've only got like 2 minutes left, so I'm gonna go zip. But if just at any point in your careers, if you're invited to speak at an event, check out the inclusion guide and just remember that it's the responsibility of the organizer of events to make it accessible. It's not your responsibility, and that the best people will try to accommodate everybody, which is great, but they might not be able to offer every accommodation, and we need to bear in mind that our access needs can clash. And I've been in that situation myself as a speaker with other speakers on the same stage as me, and we have different needs that contradict each other, and we just, you know, we accept it and we do our best and we, you know, get on with it. And just remember that it's really important to advocate on behalf of other people for their needs, even if it's not necessarily specifically disability related. And I would say always use an access rider, which there's an example of on our website, and there's a whole bunch of resources linked at the end of this presentation, so you can access everything that I've mentioned in the talk as well. And there's some further reading. But yeah, an access rider, just using that normalizes asking every participant for their needs and what people need to be comfortable in an event. And the more that we do it, the more it will just become the norm. And I know that, for example, Edinburgh International Book Festival, who are one of our clients, now asks every single speaker for their access needs through using an access rider, which is amazing because they weren't doing that before. And yeah, like I say, community is so important, and I've listed 4 organisations who, along also with places like Disability Arts Online, offer different levels of support. So there's the Society of Authors, who have a subgroup for authors with disabilities and chronic illnesses, and they'll look at contracts and offer legal advice. There's Newt Collective, which is an advocacy kind of network for neurodivergent artists in Scotland. Spread the Word, who are down in London, are fantastic, and they offer a lot of different workshops and development opportunities. And Cryptic Arts as well, who are consultants as well as artists in theatre, and they are the Disability Arts Hub for Deaf and Disabled Creatives in the UK. So that's just a few examples, and yeah, I'm here to kind of hopefully inspire a bit of creativity. And I think that for me as an artist, like I've said, to create is to resist, in my opinion and my experience. So simply writing, creating, sharing art about our experience, it can be joyful, it can be playful, it can be dark, because our experience is dark. It can be whatever it needs to be. And I think just knowing that the act of making art is resistance in itself is very empowering, and it kind of keeps us going. So I know that the kind of idea of this is that I can share some of my own art with you to hopefully inspire you to create your own in turn, and kind of bounce off of my poem, which I'm about to share. So I'll put it up on the screen so you can read it, and I'll read it out loud and you can hear it as well. And I hope that it gives you joy and comfort and inspiration. So I'm going to read it. It's a poem called Stars, and yes, it's part of a collection that I'm kind of developing at the moment. I don't feel the way I live is beautiful. It should be, because we are star matter, young nebulas spinning, conjured from colour and light. Our brains might be wired different, festooned with iridescent fairy lights. I glimpsed them once, reflected in the mirror behind my eyes. I contain a universe. We all do. Why must we insist and assist this broken way we live? One size fits all, fits no one. Can't we carve these paths in the trust that we are the best people to guide our boat to shore? What will it take to let go of old patterns and out-of-touch paradigms? They keep us dancing. Well, I'm climbing out, calling bullshit in this fucked up pea of a planet, an atom in the grand scheme of it. I will summon art, create music, release songs with my limbs, words with my kisses. I'll live in the living place. Raw, beating hearts, skin grasping skin, heady for life, the sweetness of living it. I'll roll with pleasure, brim with joy, bubble with my oversensitivity, because I'm skin and sinew and bone and all the cosmos threaded through me. I am stars beyond reckoning, only just beginning. Thank you so much for listening to me today. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here, and I really, really hope that it's been enjoyable.